Welcome to the Arts Academy podcast, a place where we focus on the business side of arts to help you attract more customers, to increase your profits, to ultimately live a life of creativity and financial freedom. I'm your host, Andrea Earhart, and today we have another interview with another muralist, and she is pretty impressive. She does really large-scale whimsical art, which seems to be a theme recently, as you can tell why I really love this style. And I love talking to other muralists that think similarly, that just have a playfulness to their art. You know, we talk about business a lot. I'm very business minded, but there's a whole like childlike side of my art and their art of artists that I've been interviewing lately. And I just love to chat about it. And so I think you're going to love this interview. We talked to Mandi. She is Miss Birdie on Instagram, and we talk about her origin story and how she's getting paid to paint these really big walls in this really fun style and all of her tips and tricks. So let's get to it. All right, Mandi, tell me how you got into the arts, how this all started, and where your street art name came from.
So I have been painting and just being in the arts since I was a little kid. It was something that I've always done. My grandma was a painter and an artist. My family have been like relatively creative and super supportive of the arts. So growing up, it was just something I've always done. And then I had an incredible art teacher in high school that, saw my potential, really pushed me and was like showing me all these different art schools and different places I could possibly like go to and be like what fields I could be in. And then from there, I went to Columbus College of Art and Design. I studied fine arts and it was going super well, but I don't know, there was just like this feeling that I wasn't getting what I needed. I think that just painting still lifes and then models, it wasn't giving me like that fun play side of the arts that I needed. And I met a guy actually in a figure drawing class, and he asked me to go, out and do graffiti. And I was like, sure, that sounds like fun, sounds different. So we went to this abandoned tunnel and he gave me a spray paint can and was like, go at it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I like did like this massive flower. And from there, it just kept going. I just kept wanting to paint and write things on walls and abandoned buildings. And at the time, a lot of people named me Birdie, Mandi Bird, Birdie. I was attacked by birds a lot as a kid, which is kind of hilarious and awful at the same time. But I developed a phobia of birds. So once my friends in college found out about that, it was pretty ridiculous. So they were like, just called me a little Mandi Bird. And I was like, well, this is my nickname, so I'm just going to write that. And then it just stuck. It's just one of those things where it's like, this is me now.
Love that. So this guy that showed you what graffiti was he like a bad boy you were interested in, or is he just like a guy in your class, or did you guys date or no?
Yeah. So like at first we were just friends because he was like more illustration. I was more fine art and I really liked his style. And then we just started painting a lot together. And then we started dating like a year or so in. And we ended up like traveling regionally in Ohio to like go to all these abandoned places and paint. And they just kept getting bigger. So I painted like large scale birds to kind of defeat the phobia of birds. And he painted large scale monsters. And so it was a really fun relationship that ended up like really changing my life in a really cool way.
Are you still friends with this guy?
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
Cool. Yeah, I love how people come into your life and they're like, let's go in this direction. And you're like, sure, why not? Yeah. And now you've grown to, you do really big walls and you added portraiture in with it. And you have like a whimsical element as well. How did you stumble upon the style that you have now and how many years was that when you first picked up a can? How long ago was that?
Yeah, so I first started street art when I was like 20. I am 32 now, so I've been at it for a while. I started my business in 2015. I've always been super into fantasy work. Even my realistic like graphite drawings and figure drawings in college were very fantasy. Like I really tried to, I don't even know, break the composition with a wave or add in something that wasn't there. And honestly, teachers didn't like that. And I think that was why I ended up dropping out and then, doing graffiti and stuff like that, because it allowed me to experiment and make these, whimsical and weird kind of pieces. For me, like really being able to create like these fantasy worlds is I just love telling stories. I like connecting to my audience. I like bringing families together. I like making a place where people can have conversations and actually enjoy in their environment. So yeah, they just kind of turn into these like not miniature, big worlds, in a way. And yeah, it's just always been super like cathartic to kind of live in that fantasy realm for me.
I like that you stayed in that. And as you were talking, before you really explained a lot, I was like, oh, and the next question I'm going to ask her, have you ever, like, did you get really good feedback from painting or drawing fantasy, or did some people make fun of you? And you mentioned that the teachers were not really into it. And for a lot of us who are maybe not as bold, we would be like, oh, okay. And then you'll just go into like people pleasing way and like, okay, what I'll paint whatever you want me to paint. And I think that's how I got lost a little bit. And many of the people that I talk to, you just get lost in it because you're like, you get negative feedback, or I got made fun of for doing like kids stuff and things. And so what was your experience in that way?
I grew up in a small town where everyone told me that I wasn't going to succeed, essentially, except for my parents. And that was really big in terms of being like, I'm going to do what I want. I'm just going to keep going and I'm going to do what I want. And it kind of translated into college and my professors and stuff like that too. And even into like today, I will reject clients. I will, like stuff like that. If it doesn't fit the story, it doesn't fit my, my brand, or like even like what feels good to me, like I won't do it. So there's like a part of that I just held on to. I feel like I'm a little stubborn. So I'm like, no, I'm going to paint a dragon. I want to.
I love
So,
it.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So do you use latex paint or anything like that? Or you just spray?
I use like a base layer of fill latex paint. So I'm not like sitting there like filling in with spray paint. But after the latex layer, I go in and I do all the detail with spray paint. So it's like all the volume, all of the, like pretty stuff that you see is all spray.
For that initial latex layer, do you spray it on, or do you roll it on or brush it on?
Combination of all three. If it's like a real huge building and there's like a massive area of purple, I'm just gonna like use a paint sprayer for that. And if it's like small stuff, and maybe even sometimes I like the texture that the wall is giving me with the brush paint, so I'll leave the brush paint texture and then I'll lightly spray paint over it. So it just depends on the wall, depends on the size and stuff like that. So I'm pretty well versed in most of the equipment. So it's whatever the job needs.
Awesome. Your recent video where you showed some of I think it was like the holy airball video where you showed some of your big ones. I was like, I think that's how I ran across you. And I was like, oh, I gotta get this girl on the podcast. That's really cool stuff. And you paint really big murals, and it's pretty cool. Who is hiring you to do some of those really big whimsical ones in your style?
Yeah, so it's a combination of a city or a mural festival or like a client. So I have a lot of like corporate clients, and that's where like my bread and butter is throughout the year. And then sometimes I'm able to work with a city directly and say that they have like this building and a certain budget for it. I either apply or they like ask me outright. And like at the beginning of every year, I like just apply to a bunch of like mural festivals. And, sometimes I get some really cool ones where I get to, travel internationally for it. Sometimes they're more like local or regional. Those really let me like expand like and experiment what I want to do. You know, like I never really hold back on a mural festival. Like that's where I did the dragon and the rabbit piece. I did that for Titan Walls in Chicago because it was like they just gave me this huge wall and they're like, do whatever you want. And I'm like, dope. Like I'll do that. So it's a little bit of everything.
Cool. How big was that wall and how long did it take you to paint that?
That wall was about 3 stories high, and I would say about like 70 feet long. It was a big boy, and it took me honestly. It was actually really funny. They told me to slow down. I like paint really really fast. Like when I get locked in, I'm like pulling 12-hour days. So that painting took me 5 days.
Nice. Oh, wow. Do you have help usually or is it just with you?
I usually paint all by myself. With that one, I had an extra hand. My ex at the time, he was painting some rocks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Like you do the rocks, thanks.
Yeah, exactly. I'll focus on the main characters. You can do some rocks.
Awesome. Okay, so applying for mural festivals, love it. Do you have any tips on that process? I've applied to a few. I've just started doing that really this year. And so I'm not super well versed in it. Where are you finding these mural calls? What's maybe your best foot forward?
Yeah. I mean, I would suggest just getting literally everything that they ask for together and already have it pre-packaged essentially. So I have like a pitch deck, I have like my cover letters ready to go, my CV is always updated, my website's already updated. I have different type of portfolios that I send to different types of mural festivals, and I just make sure that I'm literally just ready to plug and play. And so that process is essentially streamlined at the beginning of the year. And then how I find them, there's a lot of like street art call websites and like Instagrams that I've been following for a while. And it's really just like finding those very consistent web pages. And then also even Instagram is just like, you're a muralist. Here's a call for artists. And I'm like, sometimes those are hit or miss, but I'll check those out. So yeah, it's kind of just like streetartcalls.com. I think that's what it's called.
Perfect. Okay, and you applied to them mostly at the beginning of the year, you said?
So it's like so towards the end of a year to get into the new year. So I started hitting a lot of the calls in like December of last year and then into January, February of this year. So that's where like the block of calls are released because technically, right now is your mural season. So from like late spring into late October, because I'm in the Midwest. So this is kind of like prime time for me and a lot of other places too. So you're just like getting ready for mural season essentially.
Love it. I grew up in a really small town in the Midwest. I'm in Missouri. And so I can relate to that of a lot of your story. Where exactly in the Midwest are you?
I'm from Lima, Ohio originally, but I live in Columbus, Ohio right now.
Nice. Cool. So,
Yeah.
how are most of your clients finding you in general, aside from the mural calls that you're applying for?
Honestly, a lot through Instagram, my website, and word of mouth. I'm on like a couple of lists where like, marketing and like design teams like have me like already in and they're like, oh, we're remodeling this building for this brand. And they're like, oh, they want a mural. Birdie is kind of like on the list for a couple companies with in regards to corporate stuff. But other than that, yeah, it's been a lot of, through Instagram or word of mouth. And that's been cool.
Okay, wait, how do you get on these lists? Who are these people who are getting on you on these lists? Tell me more about that.
I've done a lot to work like locally with like the city and developers. So working with developers and also it's beneficial like my one of my best friends, he's a developer as well. It's just like getting into those networking zones where I can talk to these business or like building owners and kind of like these people that are navigating like how to rebuild so and so's brand or corporate office. So it's honestly been out of luck where I've been kind of like integrating circles. I also do a lot of like public speaking to where, say, a corporate client is having some people out and they're trying to figure out how to uplift their building a little bit more, or how do they implement art into their planning and all this and that. So me and my business partner will go in and we'll tell them like how to work with artists or implement us into their like grand scheme. I also run a nonprofit outside of my Miss Birdie. We're called Catalyst Columbus, and we do a lot of like murals for the public. And we try to be the voice between an artist and a building owner or like a business. So I think just being in that zone, navigating those areas has been super helpful.
Okay, tell me more about this nonprofit you said.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Yeah, so my nonprofit, I started it with my business partner, Brian Suter, like back in 2020. Weird year to start a nonprofit, but we were able to create some really cool activations, and we get funding to do temporary installations, and we also get funding to do permanent murals. So a lot of our works have been like, for example, during 2020, we painted this massive bridge that was getting planned to get torn down, but we were able to talk to the city and to a couple other people to get it painted so we could speak to the larger community. And same with, there was like this area in Whitehall that had like all of these abandoned buildings, and we drove past it and I was like, whoa, these abandoned buildings are wild, can we paint them? And so it's just like really just asking the city if like, you can utilize these spaces that have kind of been like forgotten and abandoned. And so we've done that so many times now, we're kind of known for that. But we also do a lot of like murals for the Women's Fund of Central Ohio and a lot of other like nonprofits in the region or business owners that have walls and they have like a little bit of a budget to pay for it. And we help bring an artist to that and, just kind of bring it all together essentially.
That seems like a lot of work for to do.
It is.
Okay.
It is a lot of work. But it's rewarding. Columbus, we both love Columbus, and we see the potential here, and we really want to be able to bridge that gap between the community and the artists, because we're going up against cities like Cincinnati where they have a crazy amazing public art scene, and we're the capital of Ohio and really just trying to push that here as well. But it is sometimes difficult to get people to understand the importance of public art in placemaking, in making people feel safe in the city, and giving them that civic pride of where they live.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Because I started this thing around my small town, Springfield, Missouri, and was like, I'm going to bring murals. So then, like, I did it for a little bit. And I'm like, that is a lot of work for not a whole lot of pay. And so kudos to you. That's so great.
Yeah, really trying. Yeah, really trying.
Yeah,
It's
like one day at a time. So
yeah.
who is your business partner and what do they do?
Yeah, so my business partner, his name is Brian Suter. He is a local developer. He's worked a lot with different types of sectors, but currently he's kind of like a liaison for a lot of people. And yeah, I don't know, we just became really good friends and just had this same vision for what we wanted for Columbus. And we were inspired by the same artists. And just immediately we're like, yeah, let's try to make something cool together. We're just super impassioned. And so I was really lucky to find somebody like that to be able to have these conversations.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it seems like a lot of this stuff is you're putting yourself out there and you're just meeting people along the way that are fit into what you want to do and going along. So for all the artists sitting at home waiting for an opportunity, you gotta get out there and start doing things. So how did you first start this? So you did from doing tunnels, and how did it go from there? How were the first few murals, and then like maybe tell me about your first paid mural.
Yeah. So honestly, just like what you said, I started doing the street art when I was about 20. And from there, it was like doing everything possible to go to gallery exhibitions, showing up to live painting events, doing any small job I possibly could. There was an opportunity with a magazine And I was like, let me paint the cover. Like, let me just do it. And like, don't worry about paying me. And I ended up talking to a business owner. I'm like, hey, can I paint your building for the magazine cover for this specific thing? And everyone was just saying yes, and no one got paid, but the building got painted and the painting did not make the cover. But what did happen is this painting became so iconic to Columbus that it's still there. And it's this story of you don't know unless you ask. And I think I'm a very big component of that. Like the answer is always no if you don't ask, you know? And so I always ask, even if it sounds absolutely bonkers. And from somebody that literally went from just painting abandoned buildings to going to a very well known business owner and being like, hey, you have a prominent wall. Here's my idea. Here's my sketch. You don't have to do anything with this. Just allow me to paint it. That kind of just sparked everything. And then from there, I got involved with a lot of local festivals. I became pretty much main component in this one festival called Independence Day Fest. And I was running a group of artists creating these massive mural installations for the back of stages. And really, honestly, I was just taking every single opportunity I could. And then eventually, like business owners started to see that people were traveling to see the work, that people were taking photos in front of my murals, even when they were in weird abandoned buildings and posting them on social media. And then once that clicked for them, they were like, oh, we should probably have her come and paint our building because then people will come to our building to take photos. And then it just kept snowballing. And I think I got in at the perfect time, at least in Columbus, because that's when Instagram really started like blowing up in a way that I don't think artists really truly understood at the time.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to keep following you along or following along with your mural career and see what else you create this summer and this fall and all the things, and highly recommend anybody else to follow along too. What is your Instagram?
And my Instagram is at miss.birdy. Miss Birdie.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.